chapter 4, part 2. Verse 72. Among you are some who lag behind, and if you encounter a setback, they say, God has been gracious to me, I was not present with them. Verse 73. But if, by God's grace, good fortune should be your lot, they will say, if only I had been with them I should have achieved a great success, as if no affection had existed between you and them. Verse 74. Let those who would exchange the life of this world for the hereafter fight for the cause of God. Whoever fights for the cause of God, whether he is slain or is victorious, to him we shall give a great reward. I was not happy with hypocrites who did not believe me, but was able to convince others that they were believers. They tried to avoid participation in the war for the cause of universal God. If we lose the war, they would hit us verbally, claiming that universal God has blessed them by saving their life. If we won the war, they would defend their stand, saying that it was sad on their part that they were not part of the victorious team. But they were unable to realize that irrespective of win or loss, I am offering provisions of heaven to the war participants. Verse 75. And how should you not fight for the cause of God, and for the helpless old men, women, and children, who say, Deliver us, Lord, from the city of wrongdoers, grant us a protector out of your grace, and grant us a supporter out of your grace. Verse 76. The believers fight for the cause of God, while those who reject faith fight for Satan. Then fight the allies of Satan. Satan's scheming is truly weak. Verse 77. Have you not seen those to whom it was said, Restrain your hands, say your prayers, and pay the prescribed alms? And when they have been ordered to fight, some of them have felt afraid of human beings just as they should be afraid of God, or they are even more afraid. They say, Our Lord, why have you ordered us to fight? If you would only postpone it for a little while longer. Say, the benefits of this world are negligible, and the hereafter will be better for one who fears God, and you shall not be wronged in the slightest. I am encouraging people to participate in the war for the cause of universal God, to relieve community members of the hardship of staying with non-believers. Verse 78. Wherever you may be, death will overtake you, even if you be in strongly built towers. If some good befalls them, they say, This is from God, and if ill befalls them, they say, This is from you. Tell them, all is from God. But what is wrong with these people, that they fail to understand anything? Verse 79. Whatever good befalls you, it is from God, and whatever ill befalls you is from yourself. We have sent you forth as a messenger to mankind, and God suffices as a witness. If people believe that every good thing happens because of the grace of God, they also have to accept that unfortunate incidents also happen because of God only. You cannot blame others for bad things. If that is not acceptable, then take full responsibility of your action, and say that whatever happens to me, whether good or bad, I am responsible for that. You cannot tweak the law of nature as per your convenience. Verse 80. He who obeys the messenger obeys God. As for those who turn away, know that we have not sent you to be their keeper. Verse 81. They say, We obey you, but as soon as they leave you, a group of them plan together by night against what you say. God records whatever they scheme. So ignore them, and put your trust in God. God is sufficient as a trustee. Behavior of hypocrites explained here. Verse 82. Do they not ponder on the Koran? If it had been from anyone other than God, they would have found much inconsistency in it. There are no contradictions in this entire book, which is enough to justify my stand that the book has been delivered by universal God, not created by me. I am confident of my challenge, because contradiction comes out of the confusion. I am very much clear on my ideas and goal. There is no confusion in my mind. All my preaching were targeted towards one goal, that is establishment of universal religion which follows my guidelines as messenger of universal God. For fulfillment of this dream I needed some support from my followers in the form of wealth and dedicated manpower. That also not for free. I was ready to share booties won during the war with them if they survive. And if they lose their life, Garden of Heaven with pure companion is anyway waiting for them. Other than this I did not have any other wish. Good social behavior has to be part of any civil society. The entire book was written in such a way that only these two goals are achieved, that is, establishment of universal religion with universal God, and good social behavior. Hence there is no question of contradiction arising in the book. Verse 83. When they hear any news, whether of peace, or of something fearful, they spread it about, whereas if they referred it to the messenger, and to those in authority among them, those of them who sought news would have investigated it, and could have arrived at the truth of the matter. But for God's grace and mercy, all but a few of you would have followed Satan. Verse 84. So fight for the cause of God. You are responsible only for yourself. Urge on the believers. God may fend off the power violence of those who deny the truth, for he is stronger in might, and stronger in inflicting punishment. The rumor of my death during the Uhud War had created a lot of confusion in our camp. When fighting in the cause of universal God, don't be under the impression that you are fighting for someone else. You are fighting for yourself. If you survive, you will be shared gift of war booty, and will return with great pride. If you die, your seat in heaven is already reserved with great provisions. You have already won the toss irrespective of head or tail. Verse 85. Whoever rallies to a good cause shall have a share in its blessing, and whoever rallies to an evil cause shall be answerable for his part in it, for, indeed, God watches over everything. I recommend incentive and deterrent for soldiers who fight in the cause of universal God, and against it respectively. Verse 86. When you are greeted by anyone, respond with a better greeting, or at least return it. God takes account of all things. These are guidelines to be followed greeting each other. Verse 87. He is God, there is no deity other than him. He will gather you all together on the day of resurrection, there is no doubt about it. Whose word can be truer than God's? I promote concept of single universal God. Verse 88. How is it that you are divided into two groups regarding the hypocrites, when God himself cast them back to disbelief because of their misdeeds? Do you seek to guide those whom God allows to go astray? You cannot guide those whom God allows to go astray. Hypocrites outwardly accepted universal religion, and performed most of the rituals, like offering of prayer, fasting, reading this book, etc. But they continued to live with their own unbelieving people, taking part in their actions against me and my followers. Hence my followers were not able to decide on them, and had two different views, one group in favor of them and second against them. Verse 89. They want you to deny the truth, so that you may become all alike. Do not take them as your allies, until they emigrate in the way of God. If they turn back, seize them, and kill them, wherever you may find them, and take no friend or helper from among them. Verse 90. But make an exception of those who seek refuge with people with whom you have a treaty, or who come over to you because their hearts forbid them to fight against you or against their own people. Had God pleased, he would have given them power over you, so that they would have taken up arms against you. Therefore, if they keep away from you and cease their hostility, and propose peace to you, God does not allow you to harm them. Verse 91. You will find others who wish to be safe from you, and from their own people, yet, whenever they find an opportunity of inflicting harm, they plunge into it. So if they neither withdraw, nor offer you peace, nor restrain themselves from fighting you, seize and kill them wherever you encounter them. Over such people we have given you clear authority. These are the guidelines to be followed while dealing with non-believers. Migration refers to migration from Mecca to Medina. Verse 92. No believer should kill another believer, unless it be by mistake. Anyone who kills a believer by mistake should free a believing slave and pay blood money to the victim's relatives, unless they forego it, as an act of charity. If the victim belongs to a people at war with you, but is a believer, then the compensation is to free a believing slave. If he belongs to a people with whom you have a treaty, then blood money should be handed over to his relatives, and a believing slave set free. Anyone who lacks the means must fast for 2 consecutive months. Such is the penance imposed by God. God is all-knowing and wise. Verse 93. If anyone kills a believer deliberately, his reward shall be eternal hell. God will condemn him, and reject him, and prepare for him a terrible punishment. Verse 94. Believers, when you go forth in the cause of God, make due investigation, and do not say to those who offer you the greeting of peace, "You are no believer," because you seek the good things of this life. With God there are good things in plenty. You yourself were in the same position before, but God conferred His special favor on you. Therefore, take care to investigate. Surely God is well aware of what you do. I was very particular about the use of war in the cause of universal God. This has to be used only to conquer non-believers. I am strictly against using the same against our own community people for any reason. This is a two-edged sword. Hence we have to be very careful while promoting it for practical use. Verse 95. Those believers who stay behind apart from those forced by necessity are not equal to those who strive hard in God's cause, with their possessions and their persons. God has given those who strive with their goods and their persons a higher rank than those who stayed behind. God has promised all a good reward, but far greater is the recompense of those who strive for Him. Verse 96. High ranks conferred by Him as well as forgiveness and mercy. God is forgiving and merciful. I am reminding people of their responsibility of fighting in the cause of universal God. Verse 97. When the angels take the souls of those who have wronged themselves, they will ask, "What was wrong with you?" They will answer, "We were too weak on earth." The angels will say, "Was God's earth not spacious enough for you to have migrated to some other place?" These are the ones whose abode shall be hell, an evil destination. Verse 98. Except such weak ones among men, women, and children, as are incapable of adopting any plan or of finding any way out. Verse 99. God may well pardon them. God is ever pardoning and ever forgiving. Verse 100. Whoever emigrates for the cause of God will find many places of refuge in the land, and plentiful provision. Those who leave home for the cause of God and His messenger, but is then overtaken by death, shall be recompensed by God. God is most forgiving and ever merciful. Verse 101. When you are traveling in the land, you will not be blamed for shortening your prayers, if you fear the disbelievers may harm you. They are your avowed enemies. You are advised to migrate away from non-believers and to join the believers in order to be safe and to strengthen yourself. But weak ones, like women, children, and aged people may avoid such migration, if they wish. Verse 102. When you are among the believers and lead them in prayer, let only part of them stand up along with you, armed with their weapons. After they have prostrated themselves, let them withdraw to the rear to stand guard, and then let another party, who have not yet prayed, come forward and pray with you. And let them also be on their guard, armed with their weapons. Those who deny the truth want you to be negligent of your arms and your baggage, so that they may fall upon you suddenly. It is no offense for you to lay aside your arms when overtaken by heavy rain or illness, and always take every precaution for defense. God has prepared a humiliating punishment for those who deny the truth. Verse 103. When you have finished the prayer, remember God, while standing, and sitting, and lying on your sides. When you feel secure, say your prayers in the prescribed form. Believers are under the obligation to say their prayers at the appointed hours. These are guidelines for prayer during the war situations. Verse 104. Do not relent in the pursuit of the enemy. If you are suffering hardships, they too are suffering similar hardships, but what you can hope for from God, they cannot. God is all-knowing and wise. Verse 105. We have sent the book down to you with the truth so that you may judge among mankind by means of what God has shown you. And do not be an advocate for the treacherous. Verse 106. Ask God for forgiveness, He is most forgiving and merciful. Never be reluctant in pursuing the enemy while fighting in the cause of universal God. Although there is factor of risk involved, heaven, with flowing river and pure companion is waiting for you, which will not be offered to them. You might be thinking that I must be the first leader to promote a religion with so much emphasis on violence. Don't be under illusion. In Torah, the God of the Jews ordered killing of people of other faiths and destroying their idols on regular basis through their leaders. I am just following their footsteps, since I believe that I belong to the same community of prophets and am a descendant of Abraham, forefather of the Jews. Verse 107. And do not plead on behalf of those who are dishonest to themselves. Surely God does not love one who is treacherous and sinful. Verse 108. They feel ashamed before men but do not feel ashamed before God, despite His being present with them when they plot at night, uttering things of which He does not approve, and indeed God is fully aware of what they do. Non-believers design treacherous plans and utter bad words against me and universal God in the night. They are ashamed of doing such things in front of humans, but they don't feel bad when they do the same in the presence of omnipresent universal God. Verse 109. You might argue on their behalf in the life of this world, but who will argue on their behalf with God on the day of resurrection, and who will be their defender? Verse 110. Yet anyone who does evil, or wrongs his own soul, and then asks God for forgiveness will find God forgiving and merciful. Verse 111. He who commits sin does so against his own soul. God is all-knowing and wise. Verse 112. And anyone who commits an offense or a sin, then charges an innocent person with it, shall certainly bear the guilt of a calumny and a manifest sin. I am against the people who defend treacherous persons. Although these treacherous people succeed in getting verdict in their favor by putting their sin on innocent persons, they will not miss the punishment from universal God. Verse 113. If it were not for the grace of God and His mercy to you, some of them had resolved to lead you astray, but they lead astray no one but themselves. Nor can they do you any harm. God has sent down to you the book and wisdom, and has taught you what you did not know. God's favor to you has been great indeed. Verse 114. There is no good in most of their secret talk, except in the case of those who enjoin charity and kindness, or reconciliation between people. If anyone does that, seeking the pleasure of God, we will give him an immense reward. Verse 115. But if anyone opposes the messenger, after his guidance has become clear to him, and follows a path other than that of the faithful, we shall let him pursue his chosen path, and shall cast him into hell, an evil destination. I suggest punishment for non-believers. Reward for believers in universal God and messengers. Verse 116. Surely, God will not forgive the ascribing of partners to Him. He forgives whoever He will for anything other than that. Whoever ascribes partners to God has strayed far indeed. Verse 117. The polytheists call upon female deities, and they invoke none but Satan, the rebellious one. There is no bigger sin than idol worshipping. Hence there is no forgiveness for idol worshippers. Verse 118. Whom God has rejected. He said to God, I will assuredly take a number of your servants. Verse 119. And shall lead them astray, and fill them with vain desires, and order them to slit the ears of cattle. I shall order them to tamper with God's creation. Whoever chooses Satan as a patron instead of God is utterly ruined. Verse 120. He holds out promises to them, and fills them with vain desires, but Satan's promises are nothing but delusion. Verse 121. Hell shall be their home, they shall find no refuge from it. I suggest that unbelievers in God are nothing but followers of Satan. Verse 122. As for those who believe and do good works, we shall admit them to gardens, through which rivers flow, wherein they will abide forever. This is a promise from God, and whose word could be truer than God's? Verse 123. It is not your desires, nor the desires of the people of the book, that shall prevail. Anyone who commits evil will be rewarded accordingly. He will not find any protector or patron for himself besides God. Verse 124. Anyone who performs good deeds, whether it be a man or a woman, provided that he is a believer, shall enter paradise. No one shall suffer the least injustice. I propose punishment for non-believers, reward for believers in universal God, universal religion and messengers. Verse 125. Who is better in faith than one who submits himself wholly to God, acts righteously, and follows the religion of Abraham, the upright in faith, whom God chose for a friend. Verse 126. To God belongs all that the heavens and earth contain. God has knowledge of all things. These are powers of universal God. Verse 127. They consult you concerning women. Say, God has given you directions concerning them. The commandment given to you in the book concerns the orphan girls to whom you do not give what is prescribed for them, and whom you nevertheless desire to marry, and about helpless children. He has instructed you to deal justly with orphans. God has knowledge of all the good you do. It is unfair to marry orphan women without paying the prescribed dower. Verse 128. If a woman fears ill treatment or indifference on the part of her husband, it shall be no offense for her to seek a reconciliation, for reconciliation is best. But people are prone to selfish greed. If you do good and fear him, surely God is aware of what you do. Verse 129. You will never be able to treat your wives with equal fairness, however much you may desire to do so, but do not ignore one wife altogether, leaving her suspended between marriage and divorce. And if you make amends and act righteously, surely God is most forgiving and merciful. Verse 130. If they decide to separate, God will compensate both out of his own abundance. God is bountiful and wise. Verse 131. All that the heavens and the earth contain belongs to God. We have commanded those who were given the scripture before you, and we command you to fear God. If you deny him, know that all that the heavens and the earth contain belongs to God. God is self-sufficient and praiseworthy. Verse 132. All that the heavens and the earth contain belongs to God, and none is as worthy of trust as God. Verse 133. If he wanted, he could remove you altogether and replace you with other people. He has the full power to do so. Verse 134. If one desires the rewards of this world, let him remember that with God are the rewards of both this world and the life to come, and God is indeed all-hearing, all-seeing. Guidelines with respect to marital relationship. Although I agree that it's not possible to maintain equal relationship with multiple wives, I am not against multiple marriages by a man, since that was very common in my days. Even in the heaven I propose the pure companions. Hence there is nothing wrong if we enjoy the same with mutual will within the relation of marriage. Verse 135. Believers, be strict in upholding justice and bear witness for the sake of God, even though it be against yourselves, your parents, or your kindred. Be they rich or poor, God knows better about them both. Do not, then, follow your own desires, lest you swerve from justice. If you conceal the truth or evade it, then remember that God is well aware of all that you do. These are guidelines for serving witness. Verse 136. Believers, believe in God and his messenger, and in the scripture he sent down to his messenger, as well as what he sent down before. He who denies God, his angels, his scriptures, his messengers, and the last day has surely gone far astray. Verse 137. As for those who come to believe, and then deny the truth, and again come to believe, and again deny the truth, and thereafter grow stubborn in their denial of the truth, God will never forgive them, nor will he guide them. Verse 138. Warn the hypocrites that for them there is a painful punishment. I assure punishment for non-believers. Verse 139. As for those who take the deniers of the truth for their allies rather than the believers, do they seek honor in their company? Surely all honor belongs to God. Verse 140. He has instructed you in the book that, when you hear people deny or ridicule God's revelations, you must not sit with them unless they engage in other talk, or else you yourselves shall become like them. God will gather all the hypocrites and those who deny the truth together in hell. I warn believers to stay away from non-believers. Verse 141. The hypocrites wait to see what happens to you, and, if God grants you a victory, they say, were we not on your side? And if those who deny the truth have a share of it victory, they say to them, did we not help you win, and protect you from the believers? God will judge between you all on resurrection day. And never will God allow those who deny the truth to harm the believers. Verse 142. The hypocrites seek to outwit God, but it is he who outwits them. And when they stand up for prayer, they do so reluctantly, and to be seen by others, and they hardly remember God at all. Verse 143. They vacillate between the two, belonging neither to one side nor the other. But for him whom God allows to go astray, you can never find the way for him. Verse 144. Do not take deniers of the truth, who are at war with you, for your allies in preference to believers. Would you give God a clear proof against yourselves? Verse 145. The hypocrites shall surely be in the lowest depth of the fire, and you will find no helper for them. Verse 146. But those who repent and mend their ways, who hold fast to God, and are sincere in the worship of God, will be joined with the believers, and God will bestow a great reward upon the believers. Verse 147. Why should God punish you, if you render thanks to Him, and believe in Him? God is appreciative and aware. These are characteristics of hypocrites and deterrent for them as well as those who ally with them. Verse 148. God does not love the utterance of evil words except in the case of someone who has been wronged. God hears all and knows all. Bad language is prohibited in any civil society. But I still permit use of bad language in the case of gross injustice. There is a big question mark on the approval for use of bad language in any situation. You may argue that, since universal God will punish them for their injustice, why shall we use bad language? Let universal God handle the same at His level. I never said that universal God would fight for you. He would only help you in your fight against injustice. You have to fight your own against any injustice. In that fight, if you have to use bad language, please do so without any hesitation. Injustice is to be amended by all available means. Nothing is forbidden while fighting against injustice. Verse 149. Whether you reveal any good, or hide it, or pardon any evil, God is forgiving and all-powerful. Verse 150. Those who deny God and His messengers, and seek to make a distinction between God and His messengers, and say, we believe in some messengers, and disbelieve in others, and desire to adopt a position in between. Verse 151. Those indeed are they who are denying the truth beyond doubt, and we have prepared a humiliating punishment for the deniers. Verse 152. To those who believe in God and His messengers, and make no distinction between any of them, to those we shall surely give them their rewards. God is most forgiving and merciful. I condemned Jews and Christians as they believed in their earlier prophets, and were not ready to accept me, although I was preaching the same sermon. Verse 153. The people of the book ask you to bring down for them a book from heaven. Of Moses they demanded a greater thing than that. They said to him, show us God face to face. A thunderbolt struck them for their wickedness. After that, they took to worshipping the golden calf, after all evidence of the truth had come to them. Yet we pardoned even that, and bestowed on Moses clear authority. Verse 154. And we raised above them the mount, while making a covenant with them, and we said to them, enter the gate humbly, and we also commanded them, transgress not in the matter of the Sabbath. We took from them a firm covenant. The story of Moses from Old Scripture continued. Verse 155. But they broke their covenant, and they rejected the signs of God, and put the prophets to death without justification, and said, our hearts are sealed. It is God who has sealed their hearts, on account of their denial of the truth. Except for a few of them, they have no faith. Old Scriptures have blamed Jews for the killing of Jesus and other prophets. Stephen Van Eck has expressed the following views on the same in his blog. Although originally a reform movement in Judaism, the new religion of Christianity quickly ran into Jewish opposition. This was understandable, since its pagan-derived innovations offended their religious sensibilities. As the movement became dominated by Gentiles, and the Jews refused to go along with it, anti-Jewish sentiment started appearing in the Gospels and Epistles. Of all these negative passages, perhaps none has been as damaging historically as 1 Thessalonians verse 2 by 14 and 15. For ye also have suffered like this of your countrymen, even as they have of the Jews, who both killed the Lord Jesus Christ, and their own prophets, and have persecuted us, and they please not God, and are contrary to all men. We can only imagine how such a harsh statement affected the mentality of Christendom, and inspired, almost justified, the long history of Jewish oppression. although I would have been well aware of the decisive arguments that Jesus had really been executed by the Romans, though with the acquiescence of the high priests. When it came to the accusation of killing the prophets, I would have taken it for granted that this was correct. I should have known better than to take anything the New Testament says at face value. The accusation proves to be virtually unsupported by scriptural evidence, which should not surprise anyone experienced in critical reading of the scriptures. At least 34 prophets are mentioned by name in the Bible, besides the occasional obscure prophetesses. Half have books in their names, some do not, and at least 5, that is Shemaiah, Iddo, Nathan, Gad, and Jehu, have books mentioned in 2 Chronicles verse 12 by 15 and 1 Chronicles verse 29 by 29 and verse 20 by 34. That are nowhere to be found, a fact that raises the question of why God would allow his revelations to faithful prophets to vanish completely. It can't be that they were too insignificant, since relatively insignificant ones like Obadiah and Haggai were preserved. Besides, no revelation of God could truly be deemed insignificant. Of these prophets, no record of their deaths is given for most of them, so there is no scriptural indication that they were killed. The deaths of a few prophets are mentioned, that is Moses and Samuel, as stated in the 1 Kings verse 25 by 1, and Elisha in 2 Kings verse 13 by 20, without any indication that their demises were by anything other than natural causes. One prophet, Elijah, in 2 Kings verse 2 by 11, did not even die at all but was assumed bodily into heaven, or so it says. There were instances where false prophets were put to death, as when Ahab and Zedekiah were roasted to death by Nebuchadnezzar in Jeremiah verse 29 by 21. Presumably, the Babylonian king was doing the Lord's work here, but that's not what Paul had in mind in 1 Thessalonians. We might also include Jeremiah's death curse on Hananiah, as stated in verse 28 by 15 to 17, for the horrendous impiety of giving the people hope in the face of foreign oppression. But, again, that's not what Paul had in mind either. No, we need the deaths of true prophets, not false ones. In my investigation of the prophet-killing charge, I found only 3 who actually were killed: John the Baptist, Balaam, and the obscure Urijah. The Baptist was killed not by the Jews, but at the behest of Herodias, the wife and former sister-in-law of Herod, who took offense at John's denunciation of her. It is highly unlikely she was a Jew, but rather an Edomite. As far as Balaam is concerned, while Numbers verse 31 by 8 records his death at the hands of the Israelites, it is important to realize 2 things. First, he was not one of their prophets anyway, although he set the pattern subsequent prophets followed, but was hired by the king of Moab, whom he double-crossed by refusing to curse Israel. Second, he was judged to be evil, as mentioned Numbers verse 31 by 16, Revelation verse 2 by 14 by 2. Peter verse 2 by 15, just the sort of prophet Yahweh would conceivably want the Jews to kill, despite his use of Balaam against Moab. The only fully legitimate prophet I could find who was killed by his own people was Urijah, a small-time Jeremiah parrot, who was tracked down, dragged back, and killed by King Jehoiakim himself, as stated in Jeremiah verse 26 by 20 to 23. This was the deed of one Jew and his flunkies, and not a collective act. Elsewhere in the Old Testament I could find only a vague reference to the Jews killing their own prophets, 2 Kings verse 19 by 10 and 14. These redundant passages make reference to Jewish apostasy, including that they had slain by prophets by the sword, but we should note that the only prior account of a general prophet slaying by the sword was that of Elijah, who slew 450 prophets of Baal, as stated in 1 Kings verse 18 by 40. As for prophets of the Lord, Jezebel is casually mentioned, almost as an afterthought, as having killed an unspecified number of them in 1 Kings verse 18 by 13. However, Jezebel, as a princess of Sidon, as stated in 1 Kings verse 16 by 31, was a Phoenician, not a Jew. Any attribution of blame to the children of Israel collectively for the act of their foreign queen is unjustified, and the subsequent killing of the prophets of Baal may have been a retaliatory massacre by Elijah. At any rate, he was considered a hero for doing it. In the final analysis, there is insufficient basis to substantiate the charge that the Jews killed their own prophets. All we have in the Old Testament is a solitary killing by a solitary king, and the unsupported indictment in 2 Kings chapter 19. In the New Testament, we have Paul's bald assertion in 1 Thessalonians, plus Hebrews verse 11 by 32 and 36 to 37, which makes the killing of prophets seem like a common occurrence. The source of the notion in Hebrews is not even scriptural, but derives from later Jewish traditions that Isaiah and Jeremiah had both been killed. Hebrews verse 11 by 37, without even mentioning his name, reflects a folk belief that Isaiah had been sawed in half. Another tradition had Jeremiah killed by exilic Jews, who found him profoundly annoying. That part of the tradition being highly credible. However, since both of these traditions are non-canonical, no Bible literalist can accept them as evidence, and must conclude that on the basis of scriptural information alone, Paul's accusation in 1 Thessalonians is unfounded. Further refutation might be found in Jeremiah verse 1 by 8, which seems to indicate that Jeremiah was under divine protection. Be not afraid of their faces, for I am with thee to deliver thee, saith the Lord. It isn't recorded that this protection was withdrawn, which God could not have done anyway without being a fink. So any notion of Jeremiah's being killed would present a severe apologetic dilemma. Either God is ineffectual or unreliable. Jeremiah verse 27, by 11 to 19 and 24 provides additional support against this notion, by relating how the false prophets and priests could not persuade the princes, or, most important, the people, that Jeremiah should die. But even if we add Jeremiah to the single name of Urijah, only 3 prophets killed of a guild that operated for centuries, shows remarkable restraint, given how incendiary the prophets strived to be, and murderous as well. Recall the mass killings by Elijah, and 2 Kings verse 1 by 10 and 12, and the deaths of 42 children following Elisha's curse, for a crime tantamount to yelling, "They, Baldo," as mentioned in 2 Kings verse 2 by 23 and 24. Why this vile and unwarranted overreaction did not lead to the elimination of Elisha by a rightfully aggrieved parent is one of the Bible's unremarked miracles. That is, if this bizarre moral lesson for children ever actually occurred, which sane minds will strongly doubt. Investigating Paul's charge led to an unexpected nugget of some interest. When Jesus referred to murder victims from A to Z, that is Abel to Zechariah, or even Jesus himself, confused the latter with the prophet Zechariah, referring to him as the son of Barjiah, when the Zechariah who was killed was the son of Jehoiada as stated in 2 Chronicles verse 24. By 20 to 22, and not the Old Testament prophet. This is yet another scriptural discrepancy that the inerrantists will undergo extreme contortions trying to explain away. No doubt they will also devise some imaginative explanation to show that Paul was right when he said that the Jews had killed their own prophets, but they won't find any support for the claim in the Jewish scriptures. Website address: http://theskepticalreview.com/srmag/1kill96.html. Verse 156. They denied the truth and uttered a monstrous slander against Mary. As per the old scripture, Mary was pledged to be married to Joseph, but before they came together, she was found to be pregnant. Adultery, that is sexual relation outside marriage, was strictly prohibited in Jewish society. Hence Mary has been condemned as an adulteress. Verse 157. They declared, "We have put to death the Messiah, Jesus, son of Mary, the messenger of God." They did not kill him, nor did they crucify him, but it only seemed to them as if it had been so. And those who differ in this matter are in doubt concerning it. They have no definite knowledge about it, but only follow mere conjecture. But they certainly did not kill him. Verse 158. God raised him towards himself. God is almighty and wise. Jews were carrying on their heads the blame of killing Jesus for ages together. I declared that they did not succeed in their plan. God saved him, and he went to universal God, after appearing for a final time. Jesus was never crucified. You may ask for proof for my claim, since I was challenging age-old history. Also, modern-day people believe that beliefs continue by tradition and science progresses by proof. Since I was claiming something against tradition, it was my responsibility to share proof for the same. But remember, this book itself is a proof, since it has been revealed to me by the angel of universal God. Hence no second proof is required. I am not a scientist to give you proof of everything. I am a socialist cum religious leader who believes in beliefs with application of logic. wherever required. No scientific theories, please. Verse 159. There is none among the people of the book, but will believe in it before his death, and on the day of resurrection he shall be a witness against them. I blame Jews for not accepting Jesus as Messiah. Verse 160. Because of the wrongdoings of the Jews, we forbade them certain good things that had been allowed to them before, for having frequently debarred others from God's path. Verse 161. For taking usury when they had been forbidden to do so, and because of their devouring people's wealth wrongfully, we have prepared a painful punishment for those of them who continue to deny the truth. There is a list of unclean food in old scriptures prescribed for Jews. I felt that many of this should not have been forbidden, since there was nothing wrong in many of those foods. But I was smart enough to grab this opportunity to use that against Jews, declaring that all those clean food has been forbidden to them because of their behavior like usury and looting of others' wealth, which is forbidden in old scriptures. Verse 162. But to those of them who are firmly grounded in knowledge, and the believers who truly believe in what is revealed to you and what was revealed before you, to those who pray regularly and pay the zakat prescribed alms, believe in God and the last day, we will surely give a great reward. Recommended good behavior for betterment of the society. Verse 163. We have sent revelation to you as we did to Noah and the prophets who came after him, to Abraham, Ishmael, Isaac, Jacob, and the tribes, to Jesus, Job, Jonah, Aaron, and Solomon and David, to whom we gave the Psalms. Verse 164. We have told you about some messengers sent previously, while we have not yet told you about others. God spoke to Moses directly. Verse 165. They were messengers, bearing good news and giving warning, so that mankind would have no excuse before God, after the coming of the messengers. God is mighty, wise. Verse 166. But God bears witness to what he has sent down to you. He has sent it down with his knowledge. The angels too bear witness. And God suffices as a witness. Verse 167. Those who are bent on denying the truth and on turning others away from the path of God have strayed far from the right path. Verse 168. God will not forgive those who deny the truth and act wrongfully, nor will he guide them. Verse 169. To any path other than the path of hell, wherein they shall abide forever. That is easy enough for God. Verse 170. Mankind, the messenger has brought you the truth from your Lord, so believe for your own good. And if you deny the truth, know that to God belongs all that the heavens and the earth contain. God is all-knowing and wise. I assure punishment for non-believers, reward for believers in universal God and messengers. End of chapter 4, part 2.